Hello, everybody. Great to see you all here. Excited to be here today to talk to you about something I'm really passionate about, that is mastering sales in the mid-market. I like to call it the messy middle. And the mission today is to give you the playbook so you do not repeat the same mistakes that I have made as a seller, as a sales leader, and help you prevent some of those very predictable problems you run into in the middle ground of the mid-market. So I've had a long career in sales now. I'm about 15 years in. Had roles as a seller, as a sales leader at companies, big companies like Visa, just across the road here, pre-revenue startups like Layer. Fairly recently leading the mid-market team at Twilio, which was a $400 million business, and today is the Chief Revenue Officer at Vanta. Vanta is a company in the security and compliance space, and we do sell into the mid-market as one of our core ICPs. I've had some very painful experiences selling into the mid-market, and I recall back to my time at Twilio. Early in my tenure there, I was tasked with really selling into anybody and everybody that would talk to Twilio. And I had this fantastic conversation with a buyer, or so I thought, at a mid-sized dental insurance company. And we just immediately hit it off. He was super interested. He was asking all the right questions. He was excited. My qualification questions were probably a little rudimentary, but it seemed like he had the right mojo to close the deal. We did call after call. I brought in my sales engineer. I spent a huge amount of time. I was telling my leadership that this deal was real and it was going to close. Come to find 5 or 6 calls deep that the person I was talking to was actually basically a glorified admin to the CEO. And he was gathering data, sure, and they were thinking about a project, but it very much was not real yet. It was pretty embarrassing when I had to go back to my leadership and tell them that that was the scenario and that actually there wasn't really a deal here yet at all. I did get a deal there. It was 9 or 10 months later and basically had to start from scratch. But I am here today to help you not fall into that same trap that I fell into. So why is it messy? And how can you learn from these mistakes? The truth is that, mid-market is that middle ground. What is it? Every company may define it differently. Some define it by headcount of the company they're selling to. Some define it by revenue. These may not apply in your business. And typically what companies do is define the mid-market as that between the SMB space, the small, medium business space, and the enterprise. And typically those lines get set on either boundary based on the buying behavior of who you're selling to. So if you're selling into companies and their buying behavior changes around 50 employees, you may draw the line there. If it changes around 5,000 employees, you may draw the upper bound there. This can be very specific to your business. And really, why would you care? Why would you want to sell into this middle ground? Well, it's particularly relevant right now in the economic climate we're in. The unit economics in the mid-market can be much more attractive than in SMB. These are folks that have money, they have budget, they're typically growing, there's a lot good happening here. These companies are also usually more stable than an SMB profile, but they also move fast, unlike an enterprise. You can run into scenarios in the mid-market where you've got a single decision maker who will make a buying decision for millions of dollars in a very quick time frame that you won't see in the enterprise. So it's worthwhile to chase this segment, particularly at a time like this. So what are the challenges you may run into? Challenge number 1 is that these mid-market companies, they start buying like enterprises. They might ask you for a SOC 2, which is something that at Vanta we're very passionate about. That's sort of the common application for security to prove that your product and your company is secure. They're going to have all sorts of requirements that may look like something a bigger company would ask for, but they're starting to build those motions and those procurement processes and starting to set themselves up to buy like an enterprise, even though they aren't quite there yet. This introduces a variety of challenges, and this is actually behind the origin story at Vanta. Our CEO, Christina Cassiopo, was the product manager behind Dropbox Paper. And when she created Paper and tried to take it to market, she very quickly ran into this. It was companies saying, where's your SOC 2? What's your security proof? How can we know that you are a legitimate product that has been built and architected properly? So you run into this all the time in the mid-market. Challenge number 2, multiple stakeholders. Who can even make the decision to buy? Sometimes your customer will not know who can buy, who can make that decision. They might tell you that it's them, and they very well will be wrong. And you must help them discover along the way who their decision makers are, what their procurement process is. And often the titles will be confusing. Mid-market companies are often figuring themselves out. They're introducing new titles. They're just creating new divisions and departments. So you'll end up dealing with people with titles that don't even make sense given what you're trying to sell. Never write those folks off out of the gate, because they might be your buyer, they might be a stakeholder. And challenge number 3. What does the buying process even look like? Like I said, your champion might not know. In almost every mid-market deal I have done, my champion did not know how their company buys software. They might have thought they knew. They might have had a rough list of the stakeholders and a general idea, and they definitely told me they knew. But the reality, once we started down the path of procurement and actually trying to close the deal, was very different. You know, in an SMB, those are smaller companies. Those companies are moving very fast, and usually you're dealing with one decision maker, one person with the power to make a decision and a purchase. Enterprise, it's you know, a much more defined process. You at least know what it is, and the person you're selling to, your buyer, they know what it is. It's a longer process with a lot of folks involved, but they'll at least be able to tell you. That messy middle, you're often dealing with folks that don't even know their own processes, and those processes may change between the time you start talking to them and by the time you close the deal. So, how do you impose order in the chaos? How do you deal with the chaos of these messy middle companies and land those big deals in the mid-market? I am here to give you my playbook, hard-learned over many years, through trial and error in many cases. So customers that buy like enterprises. There are a couple of key things you can do to ensure you can actually serve this market and you don't hit speed bumps, particularly late in the sales cycle. There is nothing worse than getting a deal to the finish line and having a champion and an executive buyer that are ready to go, and then they call you on that last day when they're about to put signature to paper because somebody asked them, oh, did they fill out the security questionnaire? And do they have a SOC 2? And have they checked these basic boxes that we just instituted process for last week? If the answer is no, you may lose the deal. You may well delay the deal. So get your security certifications in order, make sure the boxes are checked before they ask, and offer that information to your buyer before they ask you for it. Number 2 is have a mutual close plan in place, and mutual is the key word here. So everybody in the room has probably done some form of a close plan, write the steps down on paper, understand what it looks like to close the deal. The key in the mid-market is that you create that close plan in writing and you share it with your buyer, share it with your champion. Have them confirm that those are the steps to close a deal with their company. In many cases, what will happen is you'll write down the steps and it will force them to go figure it out where they don't know. So scope it out. Write out everything you expect that they're going to need to sign a deal, and then help them help you go figure out that process. Challenge number 2, multiple stakeholders. This can be a tough one because, especially in the mid-market, if you're dealing with a very fast-growing company, which many mid-market companies are, this can change from the front of the deal to the back. I had a deal that was done on my team in my days at Twilio. Very fast-growing tech company. When we first closed a deal with this company, it was a single decision maker. They were about 500 employees at that point. Decision maker was technical. He ended up signing a deal that was a multi-million-dollar deal. Well, flash forward 12 months. This company on the edges of the crypto space growing exceptionally fast. They went from 500 employees to 3,000. They were a much higher revenue company now. And when we went to renew the deal, my sellers were saying, oh no, we're good, they love us, it's going great. Well, when we got into it, it turned out that there were now not just one decision maker, there were some dozen plus stakeholders in the mix. Some of them had just joined the company in the last 3 months. They had titles like corporate development, business development, they had security people, they had all these folks in the mix who put the brakes on the deal and said, actually, you know, I know our developers love you, but we're going to go shop around because we're here now and that's how we provide value. That deal ended up getting done, but it took a heck of a lot longer to do, and it slipped, which, of course, as a sales leader, nobody wants to happen. The second thing you can do here, in addition to being multi-threaded, is to qualify those buyers early. Talk to your champion, map out who's new at the company, ask for conversations with folks, even if they aren't on the list and your champion has not said, this is your person, this is my stakeholder, this is who's going to sign. The more perspectives you get in the mix, the less likely you are to get your deal hung up. You're also going to help educate your champion, because as you write that mutual close plan and you work to get multi-threaded, you're going to be able to tell them, like, by the way, your security team is actually now saying that they're going to need X, Y, Z, and your legal team now says that this is a requirement. So get multi-threaded, educate your own champion about what it takes for them to buy. And challenge number 3, and this is the most painful. They often don't know what they don't know. You're dealing with a champion, a buyer, often in some cases a founder, who's looking at a company that is completely different than it was 12 months before. They move fast, things change, and you need to help them map their buying process. This is where really killer discovery comes in. And you can do this discovery in a way that's respectful, but helps your champion understand that their business is changing and that they need to also go re-scope out what it takes to close a deal. So some of the questions you can ask, this is your playbook here for the questions you can ask this buyer and this champion. What problem are you trying to solve and why? Like, why does this matter to your business? This is one of those basic questions that sellers often skip. They miss the why. It's like, yes, there's a project. Yes, there's a budget. Yes, someone has authority to buy, but like, why are they doing it? If you don't attach to the why, and that mid-market company changes dramatically over the course of a few months, and you can't root it back to the why, you are likely going to lose steam as new decision makers come in. When you multi-thread, knowing the why allows you to reattach to the business problem and help those new decision makers understand why your solution is the right one. The second is, why now? Why does this matter to the business today? Help me create urgency in this story, especially as you talk to new folks in the deal. Understanding key metrics. Again, a basic one, but what is the metric that this company is trying to move by buying your software? How are you going to define success? How are you going to measure it, and why does it matter? In that messy deal with my company that had grown so fast in the mid-market, one of the most important things we did was map the metrics. And what we learned is that, yes, they were spending a lot with us, but really the metric they were trying to drive at that point was user adoption. And it turned out we had a direct tie to helping them with user adoption and reducing friction. So instead of it becoming we went and got other quotes from other competitors in the space, it all looks the same, we were able to help them understand why user adoption was so important to their business and how we could directly impact those metrics. And every time we talked to a new stakeholder, we were able to tell that same story with the same metrics. And then who needs to weigh in? You got to ask this question more than once, and that's true of everything on the slide, but particularly this one. Every time you multi-thread, every time you talk to somebody new, who needs to weigh in? Who do you think is going to have a say? Who might have an opinion on this? Do you have a security team that needs to weigh in? What's your legal team think? Can we bring them in earlier? Your job as a seller is to de-risk this deal, and the earlier you bring folks into the mix, the less risk there will be, and the less chance your deal is going to slip. And then what's your process for purchasing once you've decided? They probably will not know, even if they tell you they know. Make them write it down, help them understand what else might be in the mix. Hopefully that's a helpful playbook to help you get your deals over the line more quickly, have them not slip, be able to have that rock-solid forecast that your leaders can trust. I would love to talk to you more about the mid-market and what that looks like. You can hit me up on Twitter. This is my email address, stevie@vanta.com. Thank you all so much for having me today, and good luck out there.